Top on the brief this morning is either you go big or you go home. It's a new order from the central bank as it pegs the minimum capital base for commercial banks with international authorization at 500 billion naira. A decision that will arguably rattle the sector. In a circular by the Apex Bank to all commercial, merchant, non-interest banks and promoters of proposed banks, emphasized that all banks are required to meet the minimum capital requirement within 24 months, commencing from April the 1st, 2024 and terminating on March the 31st, 2026. The new minimum capital base for commercial banks with national authorization is now 200 billion naira. Regional authorization is pegged at 50 billion. Merchant banks would be 50 billion, while the new requirement for non-interest banks with national and regional authorization are 20 billion and 10 billion respectively. And a new development with embattled cryptocurrency exchange platform Binance. One of its detained executive, Tigran Gambarian, has approached the court to protect what he says is his fundamental human right. He accuses the National Security Advisor, the NSA, Mr. Nuhu Ribado, and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission of violating his rights in an originating motion seeking a declaration that his detention and seizure of his travel document contravenes Section 35, subsection 1 and 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. But that's not all. He's asking the court to order the NSA and the EFCC to release him from their custody and return his passport with immediate effect. And he wants a perpetual injunction restraining the NSA, the EFCC and its agent from further detaining him in relation to any investigation into or demand from Binance, and also wants to be issued a public apology. Recall that Mr. Gambarian and his colleague Nadeem Anjawala, who is still at large, were arrested in relation to activities of Binance and sued on terrorism allegations of terrorism financing, money laundering, tax evasion, among others, a case that will now be heard on April the 4th. In another case that involves the EFCC and a former Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Mohammed Adoke, the FCT High Court has dismissed the charges of fraud, bribery, money laundering, and conspiracy filed against him over the OPL 245. Justice Abubakar Kotigi, in his ruling on the no-case submission made by Adoke, says the EFCC failed to prove his charges and ruled that the defendant has no case to answer and therefore discharged and acquitted the former Minister of Justice on all counts. On the alleged 300 million naira bribe said to have been given to Mr. Adoke by Aliyu Abubakar in relation to the matter, the court ruled that the EFCC did not provide the necessary evidence to prove his case. The EFCC had charged Mr. Adoke before the FCT High Court, Abuja, on January the 15th, 2020, along with Aliyu Abubakar, Guinea J of Malabo Oil and Gas Limited, and 3 others, where Mr. Adoke was accused of collecting a gratification of 300 million naira from Abubakar over the OPL 254 resolution. And away from legal matters, Neni Divisional Police Station has been attacked and razed by hoodlums in Anocha local government area of Anambra State. The attackers, numbering about 30, are said to have stormed the area at about 2 a.m. early hours of the morning on Thursday, wreaking havoc on several buildings. The police spokesperson in the state, Tochukwu Ikenga, says the hoodlums attacked the police station with improvised explosive devices. However, no arms were carted away and no personnel was kidnapped. And the more stories now, only broad synergy between security agencies and communities will enhance combat against terrorism and crime. That assertion is coming from the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, as calls for all hands to be on deck if the dream of a safe country must be achieved. General Musa put forward his position during the closing ceremony of the Chief of Defense Staff Joint Task Force Commanders Conference in Abuja.
One of the key takeaways from our discussion has been the importance of cooperation and collaboration. As commanders, it is imperative that we foster a culture of partnership and synergy among our forces and across theaters. Let us restore and sustain the spirit of jointness in our respective task forces and integrate it into our day-to-day operations. The challenges in our various theaters of operations have been noted and utmost attention will be given to them. I would also like to emphasize the importance of building and maintaining strong relationships with the communities we serve. The trust and support of the local populace are critical in our efforts to counter insurgency, terrorism, and other security challenges. In keeping with one of the tenets of my leadership concept, which is focused on people-centrism, we must continue to engage with community leaders, religious leaders, and other stakeholders, listening to their concerns and addressing their grievances, and also involving them in the decision-making process in spite of the current odds. By doing so, we can gain valuable insights, foster cooperation, and build resilient communities that are actively involved in securing their own future.
And now to the ever-intriguing politics of Rivers State. A group of PDP leaders led by former Minister of Transportation, Dr. Abiyesekibo, are apparently unhappy with the FCT Minister, Nyesom Wike, and are asking President Bola Tinubu to caution him over political development in the state. At a press briefing in Port Harcourt, Dr. Sekibo, flanked by former PDP National Chairman Uche Secondus, former governorship aspirant Celestino Mejia, and the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Austin Opara, among others, pledged their support for the President and his policies, as well as Governor Siminalayi Fubara of Rivers State. For them, politics is over. It's now time to face governance.
We recognize the elected president of our country and pledge our full support for the success of his administration for the benefit of all Nigerians. In effect, we subscribe to the president's efforts at strengthening our economy, fighting insecurity, and promoting peace and harmony in our dear country, Nigeria. In the same vein, His Excellency Amopu Senebo Sir Siminalayi Fubara was elected democratically as governor of Rivers State and also affirmed by the Supreme Court. As indigenous and critical stakeholders of Rivers State, we give our dear governor our total loyalty and support for the progress of our state, and through him, support the President of the Republic of Nigeria, as we believe that working together, the good and interest of Rivers State will be protected. With the elections over, now is the time for real governance for the progress of our state and nation. It is for this reason that we call on all our supporters to give total support and unalloyed loyalty to the governor of Rivers State and Mr. President. We call on all Nigerians, irrespective of party, tribal or ethnic affiliation, to rally round the President Tinubu administration, so that working together, we will collectively overcome these hard economic and security challenges facing us all.
Let's now go back to some security story, I should say, and has to do with the Okwama killing of soldiers in that community. The soldiers have been laid to rest, but there's a new development that came through hours ago that Clement Ikolo, the man you're seeing on your screen, the king of Ewu Kingdom, who is one of the 8 people declared wanted by the Nigerian army in connection with the killing of 17 army personnel in Okwama, allegedly has reportedly turned himself into the Delta State Police Command. The monarch was said to have arrived at the police station headquarters at exactly 6:41 p.m. to report himself to the police commissioner. Before going to the police command headquarters, the king, who spoke to journalists, insists he is innocent in the matter. The Delta State Police Command also affirmed or confirmed that they have him in their custody, and the state PRO, Bright Edafe, confirmed this to Delta State correspondent. And so we're following that story, and later in the bulletin, subsequently in the day, we'll get to hear what he had to say. Now, let's move on to other stories. Although the editor of First News, Mr. Segun Olatunji, is free from the custody of the military after spending 13 days over a purported story about the Chief of Defense Staff and the military expenditure, the Nigerian Guild of Editors wants the president to ensure the punishment of military officers involved in the arrest. The editor was arrested in his Abule Egba home in Lagos State on March the 15th, but his family members were in the dark about his whereabouts and why he was even detained in the first place. But journalists, bodies, and human rights agencies clamored for his freedom, and a few days back, the International Press Institute, that's IPI, said Olatunji was in the custody of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
We are sure that many right-seeking members of society, including the international community, are both amazed and shocked by the lawlessness and fear-provoking action of the DIA and agencies under the command of Major General Ndiadiye who reports directly to the Chief of Defence Staff, General Musa. The DIA's action makes us wonder about his real intention. Our suspicion is that they plan to secretly eliminate Mr. Olatunji so that members of the public will attribute his disappearance to unknown gunmen. But we are glad to report this morning that they failed woefully. For us, this vicious, uncivilized, unlawful, and criminal actions of the DIA is unacceptable. The action is alien to Nigerian democratic space. It is now clear that there are some officers in our military who are still finding it difficult to subject themselves to civil authority 24 years after our country returned to representative good governance. We do not think this kind of attitude should be condoned by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, particularly and Nigerians in general.
Let's now talk business. The African Development Bank has signed a $75 million loan agreement with Nigeria's Indorama Element Fertilizer and Chemicals Limited, marking a milestone in the country's agricultural landscape. It aims to support fertilizer production capacity and establish a crucial port terminal for exports, which will in turn boost food security as well as create jobs in Nigeria. The expansion initiative comprises the construction of a third urea fertilizer production line and a novel shipping terminal at Indorama's Port Harcourt facilities with an expected capacity of 1.4 million metric tons of urea annually. The next 25 years will be spent in prison by the co-founder of the failed crypto exchange FTX, following a sentence by the court for defrauding customers and firms. In a blight for the players in that sector, the ruling cements the downfall of a former 32-year-old billionaire who emerged as a high-profile champion of crypto before his firm's dramatic collapse in 2022. FTX was one of the world's largest crypto exchange before 2022, attracting millions of customers who use the platform to buy and trade cryptocurrency. And now to sports, the Confederation of African Football has announced the date for the finals of the 2023-2024 CAF Champions League and the Confederation Cup. The Champions League final first leg will hold on May the 18th, with a return leg on May the 25th. Now, for the Confederation Cup, the final is scheduled for May the 12th and the return leg on May the 19th. Nigeria's sole representative on the continent, Rivers United, are still in contention for the Confederation Cup title as the Pride of Rivers face Algeria's UCM Alger in the quarter-final. And those are the stories we've been tracking for you in the last, say, 24 hours up to this morning. And of course, we'll ship part of the conversation for the rest of the program and the rest of the day. Bukola joins me now to let's find out exactly what you have been saying on X.